I am welcome to this episode of Assent, Dissent. I am here with Chris Scott, who is the national political director of the Collective Political Action Committee. He's the former deputy campaign manager for Kim Foxx, which was a winning campaign as she is the first Black female elected to lead the Cook County State Attorney Office. He is also the former executive director for the Ohio Legislative Black Caucus. And he is the former minority engagement and special projects manager for the entire Ohio Democratic Party. Mm. He is also a husband, a new father of a handsome little man, and he is genuinely a good person, and he's a good friend of mine. So welcome, Chris.
Thanks
Finally, we can get
for
you
having
on.
me. It's been forever. It's been a long time coming.
It has been because I interviewed you before for my other podcast, but then I had to let that one go because of PA school, and so I'm finally excited to get you on because you are what I would call a political bigwig, so to speak. You know, your feathers extend further than mine do. For certain. So, Chris, having participated on and leading many political campaigns, uh, you definitely can appreciate the difficulty of unseating an incumbent in any election because what do you think was the cause for Joe Biden's landslide victory? What was the strategy? Was it just America tired of being Trump, or
It was Black people. I'm gonna be frank. It was Black people. I think if Black people don't come out the way that we did, I think we have 4 more years of Trump. I think it was an incredibly hard election already because of COVID, so you can't knock on people's doors, which we know for a lot of voters that need a little bit extra inspiration. That's the way that you generally reach them. But then I also feel like we saw in this election it be an election of more anti than necessarily for. And so I think that's where we still have work to do. Because I think Joe Biden has been a great asset and a public servant over the years to the country. But I think we saw a nation still very much divided, and that this quote unquote battle for the soul of our nation isn't just going to end with this presidency. I think it's going to be an ongoing battle for the next couple of years from what we'll see.
Now, I'm definitely going to touch back on a couple of things that you did, but I want to circle back to one point that you made because I agree with you that Black people, as usual, and these are my words, not Chris's words, are always saving this country from itself. But how do you feel about the, quote, historical shifts of Black men that voted for Trump? Because I bring that up because when you said that Black people saved us, it made me think of, it was either last night or the night before when I was watching Joy Reid. I love Joy Reid. And she had a Black man who was in the Alpha fraternity, and he's a pro-Trump supporter. And he even mentioned Trump has had more Black support than any other Republican, yada, yada, yada. So do you think that that's accurate, or do you think it's anything that the Democrats should take hold of or take serious?
So here's the first thing. I think it's been a destructive narrative to say, try to make it like, oh my God, all the Black men flock to Donald Trump. One, what we know and what we have seen, Black men in general have been voting a little bit more for Republican candidates since Mitt Romney on up. So this is a trend that we've seen additional 2% every year. So I think it's one of those to watch. But let's be honest, every single race in this country, the men were outvoted by their women. And at the end of the day, 80% of Black men still voting for Joe Biden. Can we be honest? Still, Black people saved the election. Black men at 80% still showed up, which people were talking about, I think beforehand, Trump possibly getting 23, 24%. He got 18%. Let it go. It wasn't a historic shift. And we need to stop feeding into that narrative. But I think what it does call out is that we do have work to do with Black men and how we engage in making them feel involved if Democrats want to be successful in the future, because we are seeing trending lines of we need to do a better job in talking to them, because the other side is looking at Black men as an opportunity point, that if we spend money, keep shaving off the vote, and we don't need to get them at an outstanding clip, but their mindset is we just need to shave enough Black men off to impact the election and swing it in our direction.
That's very true, and it's frustrating for me as a Black man, and certainly I am not as astute as you are in political areas, but it annoys me because it seems like it's a very self-destructive vote. To me, there is nothing that the Republican, as I call them, Republican Party, can offer a Black man anywhere. I mean, but that's just my philosophy. But I am among the group of people that, excuse me for that, my phone was going off. I am among the group of people that was against Kamala Harris being chosen as the vice president, or Kamala, excuse me. What are your thoughts on Kamala? Because I am not trying to mispronounce her name. I always say Kamala first. What are your thoughts on Kamala, and what do you think she needs to do to win over skeptics like myself?
So it's no secret, I was a huge supporter of her even in the primary. And I remember when I did it, it was interesting because I know a lot of people in my network were on the fence. But then surprisingly, also a lot of political figures like, well, I'm glad to see you come out. That makes me not feel like being on the fence. And here's the thing, like no politician in our time has been perfect. I also feel like when we have any type of Black person that's running for higher office, we put them through a harder purity test than what we'll put other people through. So I remember hearing conversations about, oh, Kamala isn't as progressive. Well, actually, her and Bernie have the exact same voting rate when it comes to progressive policies in the U.S. Senate. A lot of times get shed back to her times as district attorney and attorney general in California. And we have to also take that in full. As the attorney general, you're not in control of every single thing that happens. There are some things that are out of your control. Does she have things that I think she's already said that, yes, I would do them differently? But while we point out the flaws, so let's also talk about all the amazing things that she did do at a time when this was a Black woman breaking through the ceiling of one of the highest positions in the criminal justice system, at a time where the only way you were getting elected was to be tough on crime. And she branched out from that in some way. So yes, I think, there's still going to be some work to do, even with folks like yourself. But I also say, like, you have to look at her in her totality of her entire record. Don't just look at the parts where you see the glaring weaknesses, but be willing to look at some of the apparent strengths that are there too. Because I think when you look at her, she is still a force to be reckoned with. She is a dynamic woman. And I think there is something, the way she even handled herself on the stage in that vice presidential debate, and just completely shut the whole stage down the way only a Black woman could.
Now, that's interesting that you bring that up, because that's the one saving grace that I will say I've had for Kamala, is I loved how aggressive she would be when she would be in those confirmation. I love that. There's nothing like a strong Black woman. Now, I will say she did shut everything down with Mike Pence in the vice presidential debate. But I will say she did dial it back a little bit, because I know she was fighting that narrative of being the angry Black woman, et cetera, et cetera. I'm saying that to say, I oftentimes say that the Democrats are too soft. They don't fight back. They want to take the high road all the time. And I'm just done with that. Like, throw it out the window. I've never been that type of person to just take the high road. But especially since Donald Trump got elected, I'm not with it. Do you think that well, I'll save that question for later when I circle back to that question. Okay. Actually, this is the next question. So the Democrats in the House of Representatives lost seats, and they lost some arguably easy Senate races, like Cal Cunningham against Tom Tillis. Cal had a sex scandal. He lost when he was ahead 12 or 13 points. Or in Maine with
Sarah Gideon.
Sarah Gideon and the senator. Her. That was another easy one. I was someone who never thought that Jamie Harrison was going to take out Lindsey Graham. I knew it wasn't happening. I didn't buy into the hype. But what do you attribute these losses to, and what strategy changes do you think needs to be made in the Democratic Party, if any?
Well, I think first, when we're talking about the United States Senate, we got to get the DSCC to stop playing favorites early in primaries and letting them play themselves out. We saw that with Charles Booker in Kentucky. We saw that with Royce West in Texas. I would like to see let the people decide. Give them a chance to decide. I know we want to win, but at the end of the day, we do ourselves a disservice and injustice when we pick these favorites early. And we know 9 times out of 10, you're not picking a Black person early in the primary. I think the other thing is, I think we saw there's been this myth going around that so many candidates lost because of this defund the police messaging. And I think that's a horrible excuse. That is, we're not looking at the structural problems that we need to address. And those problems are, one, acknowledging who's your base now. Black and brown voters are your base. You're still going to get white working class voters, but you're not going to get them at the same rate that you were getting them in the past. Secondly, we have to stop being so conservative sometimes in our messaging. I think, again, and it goes back to that defund argument. I think I've seen so many times Democrats get scared because the other side is essentially weaponizing and radicalizing racial issues and movements into messaging to fire up their base. But when they're firing up their base, we need to speak to the heart and core of our base. And then when we do that, we can be more successful. And I think overall, Democrats, we need to be more unapologetic about who Democrats are actually supposed to be. And if we're unapologetic about who we're actually supposed to be, I don't think the Republican Party could ever even really compete with us. But until we're willing to lean in and stop playing it safe all the time, we're going to continue to take losses and not win in the way that we should.
I agree with you 1,000,000%. And that's just, you said it a lot better than I could. That's why I depend on you to, stand sure in who we are and be unapologetic. That's the word. Whereas I just always say we're too soft. Like I use this example on previous episodes, but when Trump went after Biden's son, who was dealing with substance abuse, and Joe Biden did not go back after him, I was like, Joe, you better something. I don't know what you were doing in Pennsylvania, but you need to find some Chicago South Side or something and come back, because this is unacceptable. I think that the Democrats need to change their strategy from what am I trying to say? From a issue perspective, like abortion or healthcare or this or that, to doing what the Republicans do, in a sense. And if you want to have a senator in Texas, you don't go find a Bernie Sanders progressive to go run for Senate or governor in Texas. Like, you just can't do that. That's where you find somebody like a moderate, like Joe Biden, or somebody to win over Texas.
But see, I would even counter to that, because I think this year we saw the Democratic Party pick a lot of moderate candidates. And we saw more success with progressive candidates than some of the moderate candidates. I do think there's a point to understand your audience and where you're running, but also that's how we got MJ Hager. That's how we got Amy McGrath, because they were seen as, oh, this could be perfect.
A good point. Right.
For the environment. What the people again said, look at a Charles Booker who was gavelled out and his mic turned out in the chamber because he's speaking on the things that he believes. And again, I think it's less about you. Obviously, we have to be careful. You don't want to go too far left. Sometimes you don't want to go too far to the middle. But again, I think we have to find candidates that are willing to be unapologetic about their messaging and actually engaging the voters at the end of the day. I think what we have started to see since 2018, and I'm going to go back, especially with the work with the Collective PAC, every new Black member of Congress was an endorsed candidate of ours since 2018. But you had your Ayanna Presleys who pull upsets. We had your Lauren Underwoods who are winning in districts that Black people are not the majority. Your Lucy McBaths. But what that also showed us is the type of candidate that we need that speaks to the heart of what are people dealing with, because people have real pain and issue that they're dealing with. And when we speak to that pain and we lean in on the hope and opportunity of making it better, that's a winning message anytime, versus trying to be the counterpoint of, well, we're not this.
Right. And that was a lot of what this kind of election kind of felt like. In a sense, Joe Biden did a very good job of laying low and letting Trump defeat himself, which was perfect. I think also what we need to do is, in the Democratic Party, is, along with our messaging, we need to educate people on the importance of the other branches. It's great that we had all the Black people show up for the presidential election, but what about midterms when a lot of Senate seats go up? I say, arguably, that the Senate is more powerful than the presidency. They control the cabinet picks, the Supreme Court nominations. The Senate is where it's at. The House, yeah, they're cute, but the Senate is like, it's really where it's at. And I think that we need to, how do you agree with that? That we should add some type of, not like a civics class, but
I think back to when I was coming up in school, we at least had government class. So you actually learned what checks and balances were in the three branches of the government. And even to go further, we learned about it on a federal level. And then even on the state level, yes, you still have those three branches of government. And this is the blueprint for our entire government and political ecosystem. But we have to vigilantly work next year and leading up to the midterms, because we know the other side is going to come ready to try to take back the House. And they're going to want to secure, if they lose the Senate, depending on what happens in Georgia, they're definitely going to come back for the Senate even harder. What we've seen, I feel like, over the last 20, 30 years, Republicans get hit in the mouth and they come back harder and they hit harder after they get hit in the mouth. And we have to be prepared to meet them with that same tenacity. And so the battle for the midterms in 2022, that actually, it's with the Georgia runoffs, but it really starts in January of 2021. If we want to start to be able to have the success that we need to have, so Joe Biden could actually get things done.
Right. Now, are you at all worried that Trump will be successful in his attempts to overturn the will of the voters in Michigan and Pennsylvania?
No.
Simply, that's it.
And as a native Detroiter, just stop trying Detroit. It's not happening.
Like, that's the last place the Republicans should be wanting to try anything, one of the last places. Now, earlier today, while I was watching MSNBC, I saw a report from Reuters that a Republican chiropractor and private citizen in Texas was quoted for saying another civil war is not off the table, end quote. How do you think Joe Biden will be able to govern in this type of climate?
I mean, I think it's going to be tough regardless. Again, and I think it goes back to my point at the beginning, like, this battle for the soul of the nation is far from over. It is just getting started. I think anytime you see anybody recognizing that their way of life and how they like things is at a threat, and makes them fight even harder for it. And at the same time, I think there are a lot of people that are pushing America to become what it should actually be, and live up to the full potential of its democracy. And in that, I don't think we'll have a civil war, but it's, alarming that people are thinking that way. And I think it just shows, how divided this might be, probably the most divided that we've been since the civil rights era back in the 50s and 60s.
Yeah. And I just say, let's take Florida, Mississippi, Texas, hack them off, and let them be their own country. Like it's,
Well, Mississippi still got the most black folks out of any state in the country.
Well, there's no reason why that state should be so.
About that.
I don't think they should be so dark red. Then where is those black people at? Like,
but it goes back to this conversation of investing and engaging. When's the last time you saw Democrats actually try to go into Mississippi and cultivate anything? When we saw Mississippi cultivated and making gains and electing people to Congress for the first time, it was when black folks were still getting on buses to go down there and get people registered to vote.
Mm-hmm. And when that Senator Doug Jones
in Alabama.
Yes. Oh, I thought he was Mississippi. Alabama. See, look, they're all the same state to me. Go ahead and cut them all off and let them float over there, and they can be one big happy country alone. I mean, it's that's just my opinion. Who do you have your money on for the Georgia Senate races? And well, I'll start with that because I actually added 2 questions to this while we were talking. So I'll start with that. Who do you have your money on for the Georgia Senate race?
Well, the Collective PAC endorsed Reverend Warnock back in June of this year. So all hands on deck. We were always playing for it when people were like, we're going to the runoff in Georgia and we can't believe it. It's like, we wouldn't have invested there if we didn't believe it was possible. But, I think we're all in general of we want to flip Georgia. And it's a testament to all the work that everybody has done down there really over the last 8 years to get it to this point where we're even able to have this conversation. So obviously we also want Jon Ossoff to win. But when we talk about who we're putting our resources into, we're unapologetically always supporting the black candidate. So obviously our money is going to be on our man Warnock to pull it out.
I love Raphael Warnock because I saw a few of his interviews. He has no tolerance. If they try to hit him with a shady question, he whatever, swat it away. I do not care for this Jon Ossoff guy. I know he came really close in 2018, but I just don't see it for him. I mean, he literally barely picked off that 0.3% to bring Purdue back down. I just don't see it for him. I mean, unless the Republicans don't show up.
That's all you need. All he had to do was get to the runoff. Right. And I think, again, it's at this point, but I think what we're going to see in Georgia is still black voters, I think, are going to decide the fate of this and whether or not we're able to mobilize them the way that we need to, because we also know sometimes there is a fatigue factor when black voters in any state have to go through multiple elections. You have to be intentional and re-educating and say, look, we got one more. I know you're tired. I know, but come on. Once you get past Thanksgiving dinner, let's get this vote out so we can take the Senate back. But I think in order for that to happen, and not just with black voters, but I think voters in general in Georgia, we have to be able to speak to the issues of the thing that, again, they're hurting about. And I think if both of our candidates are able to do that, I think they can be very successful. But we have to be intentional in talking to who we need to talk to.
Yeah, I need Stacey to come on through for us one more time. Come on. I know she already has done enough and we don't give her enough credit for it, but Stacey, baby, well, if you can pull this one out, and then we need to make sure she gets something in Biden's something somewhere. I said,
who says you don't want to run for governor again too?
That's true. But I said last week that Tom Perez, he needs to go as the DNC chair, and maybe a Stacey Abrams should be his replacement. What are the top 3 items that you would like to see Joe Biden take up if the Democrats do indeed take the Senate?
Student loan debt. I think it has to be, for me, it's a number one because I think we're crippled so much in what we can do. And I think it would provide an amazing boost to our economy. Second, it is obviously, well, really it's first, but I'm just saying it second in getting this pandemic under control so we can actually get some sense of normalcy back. But what that looks like is not just getting it under control where we stop the spread, but there's going to have to be a lot of work put into rebuilding people's lives that have been completely destroyed through this pandemic, especially when we're talking about a lot of small businesses and what the type of loss is, and the people that have been evicted because you have GOP and a president, a former president that wanted to play around and thought it was funny for political expediency at that point. And then I think third for me, I would like to see investment into criminal justice. I think and real reform around policing, but also addressing the ridiculous amount of mass incarceration that we're dealing in this country. I think we can't be scared to take that issue on. I think we always put it on the back burner, and I think it's time that we address it if we actually want to move forward as a country.
Cool. Now, the two add-ons to that question that I came up with, should we pack the Supreme Court? I vote absolutely yes with 2 votes. What is your thoughts?
That's tough. I think we should at least consider all options on the table.
Okay, politician. And should Biden investigate Donald Trump? Boogaloo Donnie.
Absolutely.
Because he's already acting timid on it.
The crimes that he's committed, they're heinous, they're notorious. Dude's already had to go, but now he really, really needs to go and be held accountable for the things that he did.
Yeah, and he's already planning his 2024 run. It's like, you will be in a prison cell if it was up to me. A black one, where a blackout prison cell where no one knows where you are because you're moving all the time. Like, I don't even want to know where you are as long as you can't run again. And I would also say that, speaking of that, if he ever ran again, that would be like at least one additional, if not the last nail in the Republican coffin. Because if he runs again, he has to win the primary. And he's not going to win against Joe Biden if Joe Biden decides to run again. I just think that would be a final or an additional nail in the coffin for the Republican Party, because I mean, y'all let this idiot rise to the top again and run and lose again.
But I mean, would it? You never know. Again, we saw a record year. Joe Biden, with 78 million? Trump still with 72 million. Nobody in any presidency has had more votes than both of them.
Right.
I think there's something to be said. I think if he doesn't go to prison, I don't think we've seen the last of Donald Trump. Even if he's not running for president, I think he might still be a very powerful motivator. And I think we've seen that based on how many people still came out and voted for him, more people than what voted for him last.
I think that he's going to still be running. He's going to be the shadow chair of the Republican Party still, giving them directives on how to vote and what policies. And I think he's still going to definitely be the major influencer of the Republican Party.
I really love that. I might have to adopt that from you.
Please, Republicans, because you can't trust them. They can't govern. They can't lead. I mean, what can they do? I hate Republicans. That's me talking, not Chris. That's me. So what are some of the projects you're working on presently and plan to work on in the future? And how can people contact you to provide support?
So again, with the work of the Collective PAC right now, we're all eyes focused on Georgia right now in this runoff. So we actually, we have phone banking. If you go to collectivepac.org, and go to our events, you can find out all the events that we're doing to support the runoffs in Georgia. But at the same time, I'm getting ready for 2021. I think there's a lot of major mayor seats up around this country. You have Virginia statewide elections, and I think New Jersey statewide elections. But then also, like I said, the planning for 22 has already started. While we're ready and willing and working diligently with the runoff and preparing for 2021, that planning has to already start happening before we get to 22. But anybody that wants to work and support the work of the Collective PAC, support our candidates, just go to collectivepac.org. That's PAC.org. And find out which way that you actually want to get involved to be supportive of building Black political power around this country.
All right. Well, thank you, Chris.